Now to discuss more on the ongoing European Leaders Summit, which is to begin in Paris, I'm joined by Dr. Rajan Kumar, who's the professor from School of International Studies, JNU. Good afternoon, Professor Kumar. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, the European Leaders Ukraine Summit has convened at a very crucial time when the US is meeting Russian counterparts, but fears are at the same time looming large for European Union members as well. What is your view of European Union's stand right now?
I think this is very interesting. The European countries are very worried. They're rattled. They don't know how to deal with the situation because the two countries, US and Russia, they have decided to have their own meeting, and they have included neither Ukraine nor European countries. So the kind of message which Trump is trying to send to the European country, that has rattled most of the leaders. And also, just a few days back in the Munich Security Conference, which takes place between the European country and the United States. In that conference, J.D. Vance, the vice president, sent a very disrupting message to Europe. Before that, the defense secretary has given a kind of statements where he seems to agree to most of the demands of Russia. He is trying to portray the entire conflict from the Russian perspective, and that is being taken in European countries and also in the United States among the Democrats as a surrender of the United States policy, the way it was being pursued. So that has created an issue, and that's exactly the reason why you see that when the representative of United States and Russia, they are going to meet in Saudi Arabia, while the Macron, the French president, he is planning to have a meeting on Ukraine, I think tomorrow or day after tomorrow. There is a parallel meeting taking place because Ukraine is worried, because Europe is worried, and nobody knows what exactly the kind of deal will take place between Trump and Putin. Trump and Putin are also likely to meet. Sometimes, the Victory Day is being said that that's the day when President Trump might go to Russia and he might meet President Putin. So there is a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos, which is happening in so far as negotiations are concerned, and there is no clear message emerging. The biggest losers are two set of people. One is Ukrainian, and the second one is, of course, some of the countries of Europe, because they had depended too much on United States, believing that there is a bipartisan consensus, which means they thought that the Republican Party as well as the Democratic Party, they'll continue to pursue the policy towards Ukraine, what they followed in the last 3 years. But unfortunately, that seems to come to a halt, and there is a complete change in the policy of United States, and that has led to kind of the muddle that you see in Europe today.
Considering the Ukraine summit, Keir Starmer is understood to see his role as bringing the US and the Europe together to ensure a united approach to peace in Ukraine. But what is the likely possibility of this, considering his intention to do so and the possibility of and the likelihood of both the meetings going hand in hand together at the same time?
Europe also knows its limits because it does not have the resources to continuously support Ukraine. It is not willing to send its military to Ukraine to fight against Russia, and the economies of Europe, European countries are in crisis in most of the places, and the inflation is very high. So under those circumstances, Europe does not seem to have too many choices. And Ukraine has also said, Zelensky in his statement just a few days back, he said that Ukraine cannot survive without American support. And what he meant is both economic as well as military support. Under those circumstances, what the European countries are trying to do, essentially two things. One is that they want some kind of security guarantee from whatever deal takes place between US and Russia, and they also want to ensure that some kind of support to Ukraine will continue, and if possible, there is a talk about that. There is a kind of a speculation, but we don't really know whether that will happen. They are planning some kind of sending, some kind of some forces who will not fight in the war against Russia, but who might maintain the security of Ukraine in the buffer zone. So those are the proposals which are being mooted before the meeting which is taking place between Macron and UK and France. They are the two leaders, the two countries which are very active in having some kind of
Right.
security guarantee for Ukraine. So they think that unless until there is some guarantee to Ukraine, so it will lead to two things. One is that the credibility of Europe would be in crisis. That how will people or the other countries in the world, they'll trust Europe, and what will happen to Ukraine once they fear that that Russian regime might expand further in the future, although it may or may not, we don't really know. But the fear in Europe is that Russia might invade some other countries as well. So because of that, they want to create some kind of buffer zone. They want to create some kind of stability, but that is in crisis now because US has completely changed its policy. And the parallel meeting which is taking place in Saudi Arabia, very interesting place that you can ask me later why Saudi Arabia, but the parallel meeting is taking place where the deal would be that Ukraine will not be given the membership to NATO. That's number one. There'll be no pre-2014 kind of the reversal of that position, which means that Crimea and maybe other parts which Russia has occupied, those territories will not be come back to Ukraine. They might remain with Russia. That's the reason why many of the experts from Europe, especially the liberal parties, they are saying that Trump has essentially surrendered to the Russian demands. Although, in my view, let me tell you that it's not a surrender. I think it's a kind of realizing the status quo, the reality, that it's very difficult. But if you want to stop the war, some kind of negotiation will have to take place in which you recognize the the vulnerability of Russia, which means that you cannot you cannot have security there unless until you make sure that Ukraine will not be given the membership to NATO. And Russia being such a powerful country, it's impossible for even European countries to push Russia back to its own pre-2014 position. They tried, they did every bit except sending the army, but they have not succeeded. So there is a realization in US and also in some parts of Europe where they think that we cannot go back to pre-2014 position and Ukraine cannot be given the membership to NATO.
And apart from that, military spending is also there on the agenda, where NATO's target is 2% of its GDP. But Trump says it should be 5%. What is the likelihood when we talk about the military target here?
Now, I think it's a kind of disruption in what you call Atlantic and European politics. European politics, to a large extent, was aligned to American policies. There were some demands of some kind of in the policy of strategic autonomy, especially by France and to some extent by Germany. But UK always followed the policy of this United States. But so far as your question of the raising the expenditure is concerned, I think the issue is much more than just the raising the expenditure, because the kind of policy that the US is pursuing, especially the Trump administration, so it has completely disregarded the European security concern. It is not the Trump administration is not taking into account even NATO members. Say, for instance, the NATO was involved in the entire conflict in Ukraine, but at this moment, NATO is not also being considered a party. European countries are realizing that they'll have to develop their own European security framework, and which will not be dependent on United States. France is very active. UK, unfortunately, will not take that kind of position because UK will always work as a shadow of United States in Europe. But other countries, Germany, Italy, the powerful countries of Europe, they might try to develop their own security framework where the security will not be dependent. So even with it has to be not just 5%, but it can be much more than that, because JD Vance has made it clear that we'll not be carrying the burden of European security, and you have to develop your own framework. So they'll have to develop their own military, they'll have to develop their own army, and of course increasing the expenditure, which will from 2 to maybe 5 or even more.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Rajan Kumar, for joining us and bringing us a rounded perspective on the meeting and what to look forward to.